Now turn to Part 1. Part 1. You will hear a conversation between two people who are organizing the catering for an event. First, you have some time to look at questions 1 to 3. Now listen and answer questions 1 to 3.
Thanks for agreeing to help out, Maddie. It'll be much quicker with two of us. These training days take such a lot of organizing. There are so many things to think about, and you know how stressed I get when things don't go according to plan. If we can sort out the catering now, it'll be one less thing to think about.
No problem. I'm happy to help. I know what a nightmare these events can be. Where will everybody be eating?
At first, I thought about having the food in the training room itself. That would be the least amount of trouble for everyone. Trouble is, it'd have to be hidden from them, or they'll start snacking as soon as they arrive. We could use the main meeting room, I suppose. That would give them the chance to get outside the training room for a little while, as long as they don't go back to the office during lunch. I'd like them to mix and chat about the training. And there's more room for a large table there. Yes, let's do that.
Yes, I think that'll work. When do you want the food for? Breakfast, lunch, or both?
I thought it'd be nice to start the day with breakfast, so they can eat before they start, and it would give people a chance to chat before the training gets underway. We haven't got the budget for 2 lots of food, though, so finance agreed to settle for lunch. We can supply teas and coffees ourselves in the morning when they arrive, and again at about 10:30.
Yes, that's a good idea. Maybe we could serve some biscuits, too. So, who's attending the event? Who do we need to include?
It'll be all the sales team, of course. Then there's the office staff, 3 of them. Oh, and we need to feed the trainer as well.
What about the manager? Is he going to be there?
I know he wanted to come, but I don't think he'll be able to join us. His secretary just told me he has an important meeting that morning.
Before you hear more of the conversation, you have some time to look at questions 4 to 10. Now listen and answer questions 4 to 10. Okay, I've printed the order form off. Let's fill it in now, and I can transfer the information online later. What's the date of the event?
We usually run training days during the first week of October, but this year that proved difficult to timetable, so we had to move it to the 13th of November. That's 2 weeks from today.
And what time do we want the food delivered?
As early as possible, really. I don't want it arriving after we've started. The first session begins at 9, so let's ask for 8. That'll give me time to sort it out before the trainer arrives at 8:30.
So, how many people will we need the buffet for? The caterers will only deliver for a minimum of 10 people.
There'll be 15 altogether.
Right. Now, we have some options here, depending on how much we have to spend. There is the standard buffet package. That's £3.25 per person. All you get for that are sandwiches, crisps, hot and cold drinks. If I remember correctly, there were complaints from staff the last time we had a training event. Do you remember? They weren't happy with the sandwiches on offer, or something like that.
Yes, I vaguely remember. Well, What else do they offer?
There's the premium package. That's £5.50 per person, and you get some additional snacks. There is a salad bowl and something for dessert, like fruit and cakes. I reckon it'll be more appreciated by staff than the first option, don't you?
Well, that's an easy one. We've got a budget of £6 per person, so let's go for the premium package.
Do we know if there's anything anyone can't eat? Any vegetarians or vegans, for example, or people with allergies?
I've emailed everyone who's attending. You'd think there'd be 1 or 2 vegetarians, but no. They're all meat eaters. There's one person who has to have dairy-free food, though, and no one said anything about allergies.
Right. That's about it. The caterers need a contact person. I'll put you down, shall I?
No, not me. Put down Carol in finance. She asked to be the contact person, as she'll be sorting out payment. It's Carol Beecham. Beecham.
And what's her telephone number in finance?
It's our number, 455-2298, extension 523.
That's done. One less job for you to worry about. I'll get back on their website and fill in these details.
Thanks, Maddie. I owe you one.
That is the end of part 1. You now have half a minute to check your answers. Now turn to part 2. Part 2. You will hear a guide giving a tour of Marston Country Farm. First, you have some time to look at questions 11 to 17. Now listen and answer questions 11 to 17.
Hello everyone and welcome to Marston Country Farm. We always look forward to group visits from local schools and I'm sure you'll all have a fantastic time while you're here. I'd just like to take a couple of minutes to explain what we have here at the farm and point out a few health and safety issues you need to be aware of. Let's start with a tour of the farm. I can see you all have a copy of the plan we sent out, so let me just go through it with you. You'll see we're here in the visitors centre just by the entrance. This is a useful place to head for if you get lost or want to meet up with friends later. The farm covers quite a large area, so we've made sure there are toilets nearby should you need them, wherever you are. There are toilets on the left of the entrance as you come in, just behind the visitors centre. There are also some in the cafe. You'll find this if you walk round the duck pond, go over the bridge and turn to your right past the picnic area. You'll see the cafe in front of you. In front of us, we have the duck pond. It's very tempting to feed the ducks and other water birds with bread from your sandwich box, but actually, bread isn't very good for them, so please can we ask you not to feed them. Now, to our left, next to the toilets, you'll see a long building. This is the goat shed, and just past that, there's a pair of double gates. This is the entrance to the donkey rides. I'm afraid these are only suitable for younger children than yourselves, and you won't be allowed to ride one. But you're welcome to stroke the donkeys that nobody's riding, And we've even supplied a large sack full of apples so that you can feed them if you think they look hungry. Now, directly opposite us, on the other side of the pond, is the rabbit house. This is always extremely popular and very busy. You might have to queue for a while to get in. But if this is the case, pop over the bridge and pay the insect house a visit. It's immediately on your left. For some strange reason, this doesn't tend to be quite as popular as the rabbits. And just over here, closer to us, on the right side of the entrance, you'll find our gift shop if you want to buy something to remember your visit or a gift for someone special.
Before you hear more of the guided tour, you have some time to look at questions 18 to 20. Now listen and answer questions 18 to 20.
So that's the farm. Now, before you go, there are a few things I'd like to point out to ensure you remain safe and healthy during and after your visit. Please take care walking around the duck pond. Don't worry, it's not deep. If you did fall in, the water would only come up to your knees. But the bank around it is very muddy after all the rain we've had, and visitors are likely to spoil their footwear. There are hand wash stations dotted around the site. Don't forget to use these to wash your hands after touching or handling any of our animals, and especially before eating. Oh yes, can we ask you please to help us keep these stations tidy and dispose of the paper towels in the bins provided? Last but not least, do remember that this is a working farm. At certain times of the day, there will be vehicles entering the farm from the main gate here. Please remain alert and pay attention when you're in this area. We have fully trained first aiders on a nearby site, and in the unlikely event you have an accident or feel ill, simply come into the visitor centre and the receptionist will call them. Your teachers have been given our health and safety leaflets, and they'll be able to answer some of your questions during your visit.
That is the end of part 2. You now have half a minute to check your answers. Now turn to part 3. Part 3. You will hear 2 university students talking about accommodation. First, you have some time to look at questions 21 to 26. Now listen and answer questions 21 to 26.
Hi, Ali. I saw you coming out of the accommodation office earlier. Have you found anywhere yet? I've had no luck at all so far.
Yes, they're really helpful in there. They talked me through what's available on campus and what I'd expect to have to pay.
Really? Then I guess I'll pay them a visit as well. So, have you found somewhere?
I haven't made a decision yet, to be honest. I'll be going into my final year after the summer, so I'm guaranteed a place on campus in any one of the university halls. Did you know they give priority to first and final year students?
Yes, I know. That's why I'm having trouble finding somewhere. I've still got 2 years to go on my course, so it's impossible for me to get a place. So, what are you going to do?
I'm not sure I want to live on campus, actually. Broomfield Hall is where all the high-end so-called luxury rooms are. Really nicely decorated, your own shower and toilet. You have to share a kitchen, but they're huge. You could hold a party in there. They're not cheap, though. There's no way I could afford to live in one.
What about Cryfield, that block near the sports hall? I've got a friend who lives there and the rooms seem okay.
Yes, we talked about them. They're not quite so expensive. There used to be a great view of the fields by the back of the university from there, until they built that new conference centre. I'm not that keen on living there.
But you might not have any choice unless you're prepared to find somewhere off campus.
I hadn't considered living in town again, but then the accommodation officer showed me a couple of places that looked interesting. They're both 3-bedroom townhouses. One's on the high street and there's a lot of passing traffic, so it could be a bit noisy. There are 2 students living there and they're looking for someone to take the 3rd bedroom, but I think I'd prefer to live with people I know.
Still, it could work out okay for you. Hopefully you'd get on with the people who live there.
Well, that's the thing. The other house the accommodation officer told me about doesn't have any tenants yet. It's another 3-bedroom place, no garden like the other one, but it's fully furnished. It's in a residential area, there's not much traffic outside, and there's a living room that everyone can use.
Sounds promising.
It's also down the road from the train station, and the bus onto campus stops just around the corner.
Before you hear more of the conversation, you have some time to look at questions 27 to 30. Now listen and answer questions 27 to 30.
You'd have to find people to share with. Have you got anyone in mind?
Well, what about you? If you got in quick, you'd be able to take one of the 2 large bedrooms. The 3rd one's not tiny, but one of the other 2 would suit you. And you haven't found anywhere yet, have you?
I've been asked if I'm interested in sharing with a couple of people on my course, but I'm not sure I want to live with them and I haven't agreed to anything yet. So, yes, I'd be interested in having a look. What do we have to do?
Well, the first thing is to book an appointment to see it. Are you free this week?
Our lectures have come to an end, so it should be okay. I did have an appointment to see my tutor, but she hasn't confirmed yet, so any time after Wednesday. I've got my assignment deadline then.
Okay. I'll book a date to see it and pick up any forms that need to be completed from the accommodation office. The problem is we'll have to pay a deposit, and that would be for the whole house, all 3 rooms. Unless we pay that ourselves, we'll need to find someone else soon.
That shouldn't be difficult. Some of our friends have already found places, but there are a few like us still having problems finding somewhere. But let's have a look at it first, just in case it's not suitable.
But if you see anyone today who might be interested, try to get them to join us when we have a look.
All right, I'll do that. And when you go to the accommodation office, ask them if we can pay something towards the deposit just to reserve it. Then maybe they can take it off the system for 48 hours so nobody else can view it.
Okay, I'll let you know later how I get on.
That is the end of part 3. You now have half a minute to check your answers. Now turn to part 4. Part 4. You are going to hear a lecturer giving a talk on neuroplasticity. First, you have some time to look at questions 31 to 34. Now listen and answer questions 31 to 34.
Good morning, everyone. Today we're going to look at a topic that you'll no doubt have read about on your favorite self-help or psychology blogs and websites. And that topic is neuroplasticity. It's an issue that's caught the attention of psychologists as it opens up the possibility of treating patients in ways that we might once have thought were impossible. Neuroplasticity refers to the way the brain is able to adapt over the course of our lives as a result of our experiences and interactions with our environment. The opinion held years ago was that the brain was an organ that grew and developed until adulthood, at which point it stopped generating new cells, and the way it worked or operated became fixed. So, for example, if someone suffered a brain injury of some kind, scientists believed the damage was permanent, and the most anyone could hope for was to limit the damage to the brain and prevent more damage from taking place. However, more recently, scientists have proved that our brains aren't hardwired like a computer at adulthood, and that the neurons, the cells in our brain, can reorganize. For example, if we learn a new skill like playing the guitar, new connections are created between neurons. As we go through life, we're effectively rewiring our brains. People who can see receive information about the world from their eyes. This information is sent via the optic nerve to the part of the brain called the visual cortex. In blind people, the visual cortex doesn't get any information from the eyes. But one scientist, Paul Bacchi-Rita, thought the brains of blind people might be able to get this information from another part of their body, their skin. In a number of experiments, he used various techniques to stimulate the skin on their backs. Amazingly, the blind people began to say they experienced seeing. Later, brain scans showed that the information the brain was getting from the skin was being processed in the visual cortex. It seems their brains had formed new connections between neurons in a way nobody would have believed possible in the past. Another example that's often quoted is a study carried out on cabbies, the drivers of London's famous black taxis. To pass the tests to become a London cabbie, people must spend years learning all the roads and possible routes around the city. Scientists discovered that the area of the brain responsible for memorizing all this actually became larger. Interestingly, it became larger than that of London bus drivers, who don't have to memorize the same information but simply follow the same route.
Before you hear the rest of the lecture, you have some time to look at questions 35 to 40. Now listen and answer questions 35 to 40.
It seems that certain activities can promote neuroplasticity. When we travel, our brains are stimulated by new experiences, and new connections between neurons are triggered. Connectivity can also be enhanced through memory training activities, which can certainly help people as they get older. And whether you are left or right-handed, doing exercises using the other hand can, over time, have a similar effect. Even the simple act of reading fiction is said to be beneficial. It's not surprising to learn that the phenomenon of neuroplasticity is regarded as having the potential for miracle cures for people who are struggling with physical and mental problems. It's natural that our hopes are raised when we hear of people recovering from serious brain injuries or stories about how we can alter undesirable personality traits. The idea that negative thinkers can develop a more positive outlook, that we can change our personalities as a consequence of our plastic brain and do or be whatever we want to, is very appealing. However, there are several reasons why we should be cautious and maintain a realistic view of what's possible. As psychologists, we need to question some of the claims being made about neuroplasticity. Such changes, as have been observed, don't come about without a great deal of effort. For example, people who have lost the use of an arm following a brain injury would need to do specific physical exercises thousands of times for the brain to make new neural connections. And even then, there's no guarantee of success. And research showing that activities like learning a second language have an effect on neural connections is very interesting. But I don't think this supports the idea that the phenomenon of neuroplasticity can be used in a wonder treatment for people with physical or mental ailments. I'd argue that just like the patient learning to regain the use of an arm, such achievements require a tremendous amount of effort. They aren't something that can be achieved overnight. Neither can we ignore the effect of age. What's possible for a younger person might not be achievable for an older one. And then there's the effect of our genes and how these might limit the degree of plasticity our brains are capable of. Nevertheless, this is a fascinating area of science for anyone interested in psychology, and one that I'm sure you'll hear a lot more about during your studies and later on in your professional lives.
That is the end of part 4. You now have half a minute to check your answers.